This just in, what the f?
We need to talk about Fortnite Battle Royale's hidden worst change, because it's maybe not what you think it is. When the second season of Chapter 4 launched in March of 2023, everyone was too distracted by the glimmering neon lights of Mega City to notice that one core game feature had been substantially changed. And no, it's not the supply drops being removed, although combat caches did indeed suck. This is worse. I'm talking about the Storm. Yeah, the big purple wall that closes in around the island every 22 minutes. Prior to Chapter 4 Season 2, or for simplicity's sake we'll just call it 4-2, the Storm had 9 phases. During each of these 9 phases, the Storm deals incrementing damage. For example, in the first phase it takes away 1 health point per tick, every second basically. But by phase 3 it deals 5 damage for every tick you stay in the Storm. Pretty simple, right? The Storm is a big threat. It forces you to think on your feet and move to the safe zone whilst dealing with the trials and tribulations of a match. The Storm also shrinks very small after just a few phases, forcing players to fight each other and resulting in the traditional high-stakes late-game experience that everybody loves. In Chapter 4 Season 2 onwards, the Storm now has 12 phases. Let me break down how they work. Phases 1 through 5 are the shrinking zones that you're familiar with. Each circle is contained entirely within the last, and approximately 33% smaller. Phases 6 through 8 stick to the edges of the previous zone and can now slightly overlap with the Storm, creating an imperfect circle while it shrinks. And phases 9 through 12 are the endgame zones, which travel through the Storm and force significant movement for all players. With extra zones now, the game has to accommodate to keep the same length, so the early game, before the first Storm forms, is much shorter, making POIs further out of the way much less viable drop spots as you get less time to loot up. It's worth noting that if a lot of players die in the mid game, you may not actually make it through 12 zones. In most public matches, you'll probably end on phase 8 or 9. Generally only competitive makes it to the 12th and final zone. Despite that, matches are still generally longer than they were prior. Battle Royale matches have traditionally lasted 22 minutes, they even wrote the game's lore around that fact, but with these changes, matches can now very often run up to 25 minutes long. So let's compare the data. Before 4-2, there were 2 Storm phases in which the Storm did 1 tick of damage per second, meaning the first 11-ish minutes of the match are like this. Following 4-2, there are now 5 Storm phases with 1 tick damage, adding an extra 5 minutes to a total of 16 minutes of match time with 1 tick damage. What this means is that the Storm is now less of a threat, and now it's more of an annoyance. With the abundance of healing items in the game, the Storm really won't force you to move that quickly, it'll just force you to keep healing and healing and healing. It's frustrating, not scary. This does have hidden benefits though. If the safe zone is super risky, you can run out into the Storm to use a reboot van or grab some extra loot. But I don't see why that would be necessary considering how big the safe zone is now, so let's talk about that. Before 4-2, the safe zone, or Eye of the Storm, would be a size of 200 meters across by the closing of the 3rd phase, so by the 15-minute mark, all players are squeezed into an area roughly the size of Greasy Grove. Since 4-2, the safe zone reaches a size of 200 meters after the end of phase 6, which is just after the 18-minute mark. Basically, the radiuses of the 4-2 zones are a lot bigger. That gives you more room to rotate, less risk of being forced into a fight, and overall reduces the likelihood of running into other players as you've all got that much more room to explore and breathe. For competitive playlists, Storm Surge values will also change with this update. Compared to the previous iteration in Chapter 3, most threshold checks were basically just moved to later in the match, resulting in more players alive later into the game. That's a big part of why there are a frankly comedic amount of people left in the endgame in most tournaments these days. It's because there is less incentive to be aggressive and kill each other earlier in the match. So what does all this mean for your Fortnite matches, and more importantly, why is it bad? Well, firstly, public matches of Fortnite have been impacted by the bot epidemic since 2020. More often than not, you'll eliminate the last real player in the lobby without even realizing it, and then be left looking for the other remaining islander, which will be a bot. In these big old zones, you end up with just a few people left in an absolutely massive storm circle, resulting in a much more boring and unsatisfying late game experience. But why is it a bot so often? Well, the way these clanking commanders are programmed is that they prioritize getting to the safe circle over just about anything anything else. That is why you'll usually find them just running around aimlessly, hugging the storm wall while waiting for the next zone to form. Bots are another issue entirely, but with how long it takes for the 4-2 storms to start dealing some real damage, bots can easily just surf through the storm and make it to the very end of the match. This is just poor game design, in my opinion. Under all the circumstances, the final player you fight in a battle royale game should be a real player. It's also incredibly easy to predict where the storm will go now. Battle Royale is a game of random chance, but the predictable, samey storms that often almost feel scared to pull to a different direction mean it doesn't take much skill to figure out where to go next in advance, and that takes away a whole layer of rotation. With the introduction of the Fortnite OG mode, Epic Games brought back the original 9-phase storm system. This system is so much more unpredictable. There's a real risk that if you drop far out, you're going to have to travel a really long way to get to the safe zone. And that's scary. It forces danger and confrontation. It's good. And then they took it away. The 9-phase system adds variety to each and every match. Having to travel through the bustling streets of Tilted Towers because it is the only way to quickly get to the next safe zone is a part of the definitive Fortnite experience, but the 4-2 changes killed that because now the safe zone is so damn big and the storm deals so little damage, you can just go around. The chance of getting caught in the storm is so low, unless you get repeatedly held in fights or spend far too long losing up. It is genuinely impressive to die to the storm these days, unless you have absolutely no heals or, I don't know, literally just came out on top of a fight. Yes, okay, they did add Storm Sickness, but that was added to combat heals abuse. You will have to take some 600 damage in the storm to even have a chance of being afflicted with sickness. The original 9-zone structure works very well with Fortnite's unique building mechanics. Building means that you can recover and get around these rough areas without being caught out. My guess is that these changes were made with the zero build mode in mind, and look, yeah, they make sense for zero build. They allow for players to more carefully position themselves as they move, rather than being forced to run to zone and work with wherever they end up. When you can build, how you move to the zone becomes irrelevant, and it ends up making the game slow down to a crawl as you run around a slower, larger zone, hoping you find someone. So that begs the question, if Epic can make different storm zone values for reload and OG, why not zero builds too? I really do hope Epic reconsiders their approach to the storms in a future update, because the days of the storm being anything more than a hindrance are long over. So Epic needs to lock in now and make some changes unless they want Fortnite to continue feeling like this.
What the f-